People are not mind readers. Steve followed Kayla to the back of the store and saw her slip through a door with a small nameplate bearing her name. When he reached the doorway of Kayla's office, he stood transfixed. Inside was a forest of shelves, boxes, barrels, trunks, and cabinets stuffed with magic paraphernalia. It was an enchanted place, not because of the things in it, but because of the feeling he got when he entered the room. Kayla went over to an old oak filing cabinet labelled Magic of Proactive Self-Leadership. She opened the top drawer, rifled through the files, and pulled out a sheet as she exclaimed, "Abracadabra!" Steve laughed despite himself, caught up in Kayla's joy of finding a single piece of paper. "Your homework for this afternoon," she said, handing him the sheet. Instructions. Rank the following workplace motivators according to their importance to you. Place the ranking, 1 through 10, beside the motivator, with 1 being the most important, through 10 being the least. Interesting work. Full appreciation of work done. Feeling of being in on things. Job security. Good wages. Promotion and growth within the organization. Good working conditions. Personal loyalty to employees. Sympathetic help with personal problems. Tactful disciplining. After you've ranked the motivators, then ask at least 5 of your co-workers for their rankings. Bring it all back to me tomorrow and tell me what you've learned. "Is this a trick?" Steve asked skeptically. "It's the beginning of one," Kayla said enthusiastically. "What you learn from this assignment will reinforce what you learned today and introduce you to the first trick of being a self-leader." "Okay, I'll go along with this for now, but I'm not saying I won't quit. I have until my boss gets back at the end of the month to make up my mind." Saying the words filled Steve with foreboding. He had never left a job under negative circumstances. "If you don't mind me asking, what's in this for you?" Kayla smiled. "Remember the 1-minute manager guy I told you about? After he got me out of my mess, I asked him how I could repay him for all his insight and help. He told me that the one thing I could do was pass on the learning to others. Besides," she continued with a wink, "my life purpose is to be a magician. You're giving me the opportunity to do magic." "I guess I could use a little magic right now," Steve admitted. "I'll see you tomorrow." Steve arrived back at the agency and ducked into his office when one of his team members happened by. He knew he'd have to face his failure tomorrow at the scheduled meeting, but he wasn't ready to talk about it just yet. Using his printer, he scanned the sheet Kayla had given him and emailed the electronic version to 5 co-workers. Rhonda's assistant, Phyllis, a young account executive named Grant, his buddy in the mailroom, Mike, his favorite tech, Sky, and Ricardo, the senior partner on his floor. The email went out with the following message. "I need your help for a study I'm conducting. Could you take a few moments to fill out this survey and drop it by my desk on your way out today? It's homework I have to turn in tomorrow. Thanks, Steve." Then he took a couple of minutes to rank his own sheet. Just before the end of the day, Phyllis dropped by his office. "I finished your survey," she said. "It's very intriguing. I'll be interested to hear what you learn when your study is complete." Before Steve could respond, Grant popped his head in. Handing his survey back to Steve, he said, "No offense, but I don't see how this study is going to prove anything. I mean, it's pretty obvious that interesting work is what really motivates people." "Actually, job security is what's important to me," said Phyllis. "No way," said Sky, who had overheard the conversation as she entered Steve's office. "It's all about good working conditions." Mike arrived moments later and argued that having his work appreciated was what motivated him most. The group began a raging debate over the most important motivators. Each had their own rationale for their ranking. As the noise level escalated, Ricardo came out of his office to investigate. "What's going on?" he asked. "It's about the survey I sent you earlier today," Steve said, handing him a copy. The Madison Avenue-dressed exec glanced at the list and said, "Oh, that. Pretty obvious that people are motivated by good wages. All of you have asked for more money in the past, so I assume that's what motivates you." The group stood in quiet surprise. None of them had mentioned good wages in their top 3 choices. As people shared their top motivators with Ricardo, his mouth dropped open. "I can't believe I've worked with this team for years without knowing what's really important to you." Steve said, "That's the point of this exercise. Each of us has different things that motivate us. Grant's creativity demands interesting work. Phyllis values security, probably because she's raising a young family. Plus, what motivates you today may change tomorrow. Steve looked at the mailroom clerk. For example, when Mike's kids get older, he's thinking about sending them to college. Good wages may go to the top of his list. Okay, Grant allowed. Maybe different things motivate each of us. Is that the point? Steve thought about his discussions with Kayla. She said this survey would reinforce what he'd learned earlier and lead to the first trick of self-leadership. Suddenly the dots connected in Steve's mind. The point is, our bosses are not mind readers, he exclaimed. How in the world can we expect them to understand what motivates each of us? It's not fair to them or to us. Feeling true excitement about his insight, Steve looked at each of his colleagues one by one and declared, Ultimately, it's in your own best interest to accept responsibility for getting what you need to succeed in the workplace.